Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the family of Helen Keller, the Helen Keller Foundation for Research and Education, and its president, Dr. Robert Morris, and our partners at the Bright Focus Foundation, I would like to warmly welcome you to the 2025 Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research. My great-grand-aunt, Helen Keller, once wrote, "Knowledge is love and light and vision." This quote connects knowledge with positive emotion and the ability to see the world more clearly, highlighting the transformative power of learning and of research. I know my Aunt Helen would be truly grateful and overjoyed at these remarkable achievements that have answered her plea to help me hasten the day when there shall be no preventable blindness. Tonight, we honor those who have transformed lives through their dedication to vision research. It's only once a year that I get to introduce two very special people who give of their time and their expertise as they co-chair the Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research Committee. Tonight is a pleasure to welcome to the podium my dear friends, Dr. Nick Delamere and Dr. Joe Hollyfield.
Good evening. I had no idea that that light would be so bright. Welcome, everyone. Nick and I are co-chairs of the Scientific Advisory Committee, and I would like to thank the committee for all the hard work that they do each year. We've gotten, over the last few years, somewhere between 20 and 40 nominations. The committee, each member of the committee sees every one of those nominations. They rank them, and then we get together to discuss the top 4 or 5 individuals each year. The committee, I would like to ask each of the committee members to stand. I can't see beyond the glare in my face, but Dean Bach, Bella Anand Apte, I can't see anyone else. Where? Bronwyn, yes, Bronwyn. One of our committee members I'd like to mention specially, Terry Young, who served for about 10 years now, but she's the new president of ARVO next year.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's nothing that could be worse than having to follow Joe. But just let me say, welcome everybody. We're very grateful that you took the time out of a busy ARVO week to come and spend the evening with us. And I would just like to recognize any of the past nominees or the past awardees who are with us tonight. One. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Dr. Robert Morris has been a guiding light for my family as he has so effectively aligned the name of Helen Keller with solutions to blindness, something that my family, especially my grandmother, Patty Tyson Johnson, desperately wanted. I met Dr. Morris when I was 19 years old, and I'll be 55 tomorrow. I have worked alongside him to teach the many lessons of Helen Keller all over the world for the last 33 years. But I think I've learned a lot of lessons from Dr. Morris too. He reminds me so much of my Aunt Helen, and that he is someone who is passionate about his work, and he strives to make a positive difference in the world around him. Please welcome to the podium Dr. Robert Morris, President of the Helen Keller Foundation for Research and Education.
Well, each year it's hard to recognize myself from her comments, but thanks, Keller. Welcome. Welcome to the 2025 Helen Keller Prize ceremony. We have 2 news items to share with you. First, you'll soon see on clinicaltrials.gov our trial of laser treatment to prevent retinal detachment. This is the culmination of 25 years of research at the foundation, and to our knowledge, it's the first ever trial of retinal detachment prevention since lasers were introduced in 50 years ago for retinopexy. Secondly, we're returning our name, the Helen Keller Foundation for Research and Education, to its original name, the Helen Keller Eye Research Foundation. Because Keller and her cousins are expanding our education program into an entirely new Helen Keller Education Foundation, teaching all things Helen Keller. This will be the only Helen Keller named organization whose primary mission is teaching the Helen Keller legacy. It's very exciting, and the new foundation will be based in their hometown of Tuscumbia, Alabama, Helen's birthplace. Look for their fabulous new website in the next few months. Now, how many people, isn't that great? How many people, show of hands, know what skeet and trap shooting is? Yeah, America wins the Olympic event oftentimes. And it's my hobby. And I was taking skeet shooting lessons a few weeks ago in San Antonio with the world champion. And he was teaching me and two other fellas. And a guy named Gary from Oklahoma wasn't doing too well. And Mr. Shima said, Gary, you're getting older. You're going to have to change your shooting techniques. Before he could say anything, Shima's assistant came up and said, no, Gary, you're not getting older. You're already there. So as we award the Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research 31 years after its inaugural presentation to Dr. Arnold Patz, we've grown older, and so has the Helen Keller Prize. But it has grown stronger with age, benefiting from the accumulative wisdom of those who have taken such wonderful care with it. We're certain that Helen Keller would be pleased with her prize and with the prize selection committee and with the entire group of Helen Keller laureates. Thank you for attending this year's ceremony.
Helen Keller once said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. An old African proverb once said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The Helen Keller Foundation is honored to have the Bright Focus Foundation as its partner and as its friend. Please join me in welcoming President and CEO of the Bright Focus Foundation, Stacy Pagos Haller.
Thank you, Keller. Oh man, Joe, you're right. And here we're all with eyes, right? And they got it right on me. It's that new lighting. So forgive me if I have to look down a little bit more. It's wonderful to be here with you as we honor Dr. Sheffield and Dr. Stone for their remarkable contributions to the field, and to welcome the many wonderful vision researchers that are here that work every day to discover groundbreaking treatments, improvements, so that we can all live our lives well. And at Bright Focus, we like to think so we can all age as well as we possibly can, and disease is not in our path of our eyes. So thank you all for what you do. You know, I've been doing this a little while, and our foundation is now 52 years old, and we are proud, and we know one thing. Research is our only hope for a cure, and you all make that a reality every day, and I thank you. And for myself and the 500,000 donors we have that trust in us with the help of our scientific review committees to make smart decisions every year. With that, currently our research portfolio has about 24 million of 90 projects, and that's not even including the grants we're just about to announce. So, and interestingly enough, the fact that we don't receive any government funding tells us all that next year is going to be quite an active year. I wish it wasn't for the reasons in front of us. So when we talk about the foundation, the one thing I want to emphasize is we've always been a group that looked at disease has no borders, giving should be in no borders, and countries need to work globally just the way the scientific community does. And while we have given $300 million to date, I have a feeling that doesn't even touch the problem we have before us. But I believe that I would like to share with you about how important it is to come together and stay positive and fight the good fight, because there was somebody very special, Helen Keller, who said, "We can do anything we want to do if we stick at it long enough. We're stronger, we're smarter, we're more dedicated, and you just please stay the course, even through those difficult days, because this will turn around. We just can't know when. But if we bring the forces together of the institutions and the people that are here and across the country, we can continue to shine a light on making eye research and eye health a national priority. And at least for us at Bright Focus and with all the other vision funders, know that we are completely dedicated to doing everything we can to help you during this troubling time. And again, let me just close by saying it's a sincere honor to be with Dr. Stones in Sheffield and to celebrate with the Helen Keller Foundation and our good friends, Bob Morris, Keller, and of course, thank you to Laura for making this all work so well every year. Thank you for your attention.
On March 11th, 1941, President Herbert J. Grant presented Helen Keller with a copy of the Book of Mormon in Braille. The news reported that she expressed her pleasure at the gift and read rather rapidly. The next day, under the direction and patronage of organizations like the Utah Commission for the Blind, Helen Keller visited Utah and answered questions in the tabernacle on Temple Square. And I would like to share with you the story from a young girl's eyes that was actually present at that event. When I was a little girl, my daddy took me to Salt Lake City to hear Helen Keller in the tabernacle. I must have been about 8 or 9, and I'd read about Helen Keller in school, and my mama had told me her story, and she decided it would be more important for me to go than for her to go. I remember sitting in the balcony right at the back of the huge dome building that was supposed to have the best acoustics in the world. Helen, everybody called her that, walked in from behind a curtain under the choir seats with her assistant, Polly Thompson. She answered questions about being deaf and blind and of learning to read and write and to speak. Hearing that voice making words were like hearing words for the first time for me, like language had only come into being, into my being at least. Her voice, someone asked her, "Do you feel colors?" I'll never forget her answer. The exact sound of it. "Sometimes I feel blue." Her voice went up slightly at the end, and that meant she was smiling. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. After many questions, she said, "I would like to ask a favor of you." Of course, the whole audience was on alert. "Is your Mormon prophet here?" she asked. There was a flurry of getting up from the front row, and President Grant walked up the stairs to the stand. She reached out her hand, and he took it. "I would like," she said, "to hear your organ, to hear it play your most famous song about your pioneers. I would like to remember hearing it here." All the time, she continued holding his hand. I liked them together very much. I remember thinking, I'm only a little girl. Probably others know, but how in the world will she hear the organ? But she turned toward President Grant, and he motioned Alexander Schreiner, the tabernacle organist, who was sitting near the loft. At the same time, President Grant led her up a few steps to the back of the enormous organ. It had 5 manuals and 8,000 pipes. We were all spellbound. He placed her hand on the grained oak of the console. She stood all alone, facing us in her long black velvet dress, with her right arm extended, leaning slightly forward and touching the organ with her head bowed. Brother Schreiner played, "Come, Come Ye Saints," each verse a different arrangement. The organ pealing, throbbing, the bass pedals like foghorns, as only he could make happen. Helen Keller stood there, hearing through her hand and sobbing. Lots of us in the audience were mouthing the words to ourselves. "Gird up your loins, fresh courage take, God will never us forsake." And then we'll have this tale to tell, all is well, all is well. At that moment, in that tabernacle, that singing, my ancestors welling up in me, my daddy beside me, that magnificent woman, all combined with the organ and the man who played it, and the man who had led her to it, and I believed. I believed it all, the seeing without seeing, the hearing without hearing, the going by feel towards something holy, something that could make her cry, a moment I will never forget. You see, Helen Keller's story has the power to make the world a better place. She was a writer, a world traveler, an outspoken citizen, and a passionate advocate for others. She fought to put her beliefs into action, to make sure that veterans who lost their sight in battle received rehabilitation services, and that blind children gained access to good education, and the life-changing knowledge of her beloved Braille. Helen Keller changed perceptions of what it means to be blind and deafblind. She fought for the rights of those with visual impairments, including greater employment opportunities. Helen Keller changed the world. Our purpose is to keep changing it, as she envisioned, to keep serving, to keep teaching, to keep researching, to keep protecting, to keep healing, to keep saving, to keep enlightening. As she said, optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. At this time, please welcome to the podium the 2016 Helen Keller Laureate, Dr. Dean Bach.
Thank you very much, Keller. It's my great privilege and honor to be here tonight to say a few words about Ed and Val regarding their careers and their accomplishments. And it would be challenging indeed to think of 2 clinician scientists who could possibly be more synergistic than the 2 of these people. Beginning with their education, they both earned their PhD degrees in 1983. They both earned their MD degrees in 1985. Val at the University of Chicago, Ed at Baylor. They then did their residencies, Val at UC San Francisco, Ed at Baylor. And in 1990, they were both appointed faculty members at the University of Iowa. Starting in 1991, they began their collaborations. 166 papers later, we sit here tonight. And that's only the beginning of their publications because they had many other collaborators as well. Thus began 2 distinguished and highly influential careers in genetics, cell biology, animal modeling, and inherited retinal disease. They have touched every corner of the eye: the cornea, ciliary apparatus, retina, lens, and choroid. When one thinks of the complex disease called Bardet-Biedl syndrome, you immediately think of Val and Ed. They have made enormous contributions to that field. This is a complex disease. It involves obesity, hypertension, additional fingers and toes, renal insufficiency, and blindness. They discovered the first gene underlying this complex disease, and since that time, by my count at least, another 26 genes, another 25 genes, and 26 altogether have been solved for this complex disease. Most of these Bardet-Biedl syndromes involve an important cellular structure called the primary cilium. Many cells in our body have primary cilia. They're little structures that jut out from the surface of the cell, and they're sensory in nature. And they are the thoroughfare for the trafficking of many molecules that move to and fro, very much like automobiles at a complex interchange, freeway interchange. In the photoreceptor cell, this part of this structure is a little tube that connects the manufacturing center of the cell, what we call the inner segment, and the light-sensitive antenna of the cell, which we call the outer segment. And the entire tube, the complex of the entire tube and the antenna are a highly differentiated primary cilium. In Bardet-Biedl syndrome, there's a whole panoply of proteins that lie at the base of this cilium, and they direct traffic. They're involved in traffic themselves. And as you can imagine, if there's a traffic accident, you have a problem. And the antenna suffers as a result, and the rods and cones die. So that, in short, is the underlying cause for Bardet-Biedl syndrome blindness. Now, of course, they didn't stop there. They have identified many monogenic diseases, the genes underlying many non-syndromic ocular diseases. They discovered the first glaucoma gene. They solved the gene for S-cone, enhanced S-cone syndrome. A very interesting observation was with regard to a disease that had 3 different names. Malatia levantinese, the Swiss call it that in the Italian part of Switzerland. And I noticed that Dr. Aon is here tonight, and she was part of that wonderful work. It turned out that these 3 diseases, Malatia levantinese, Doyne's honeycomb dystrophy, and dominant radial drusen, are all caused by the same mutation. A single amino acid substitution causes these 3 diseases. In addition to that, they displayed beautifully the concept of background gene effects. In the RDS gene, we also call it peripherin 2, we have defects, of course, and peripherin is sort of like a Velcro molecule that holds the outer segments together. In its absence, there is no outer segment. And yet they showed that with mutations in this gene, you can have totally different phenotypes. You can have retinitis pigmentosa. You can have pattern macular dystrophy. And it's the defect in a single protein that leads to these different phenotypes. And they went on to discover many other, I could give you many examples, but let's move on to what our heroes have done with regard to humanity. They have taken on mighty administrative responsibilities. Ed founded the Vision Science Research Center at Iowa. He founded the Carver nonprofit genetic testing laboratory, which provided very affordable testing to people in the United States and around the world, giving very high sensitive results and tremendous benefit to people in not only this country but around the world. Val, beyond his research, has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the medical community. He was the director of medical genetics at the University of Iowa for 22 years. He served on many influential councils around the country. I could provide a long list of their honors. They are legion. Let me just mention 2. They were both simultaneously, again, investigators in the Howard Hughes Medical Institute program. I can tell you from personal experience, having been involved in their reviews, that clinician scientists are facing a tough road in that process, and they conquered it beautifully. As for personal qualities, I'd like to make two quotations read to you from their dossiers. From having seen Ed consult his patients, it was apparent that he would afford the same effort of kindness and energy to an elderly lady who needed new spectacles as he would to a prized patient who might offer him a wonderful opportunity for research. Regarding Val, I want to read it directly so I don't make any mistakes. Val is a kind, generous, caring person. He has great integrity, and that is really satisfying to be reminded that someone who is a decent and good person can be as successful in academia and medicine as he is. Well done, gentlemen.
Well, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to present to you the 2025 Helen Keller Prize for Vision Research laureates, Dr. Val Sheffield and Dr. Ed Stone.
Well, this is really humbling and a bit embarrassing, particularly to have your picture up there. Let me start by reading this quote from Helen Keller. This is from an e-book put together by the Helen Keller Foundation, as you see at the bottom of the slide here. It says, as such an inspiring figure, Helen traveled worldwide telling others of her life story and sharing her feelings of optimism. One event early in her travels illustrated Helen's unwillingness to give up. After years of voice training in 1913, Helen would give her very first lecture. As Helen walked on the stage, she hesitated, forgetting her voice lessons. Helen began to lose control of her tone and ran off the stage, crying. The audience, however, was understanding, and Helen found courage and optimism within herself and returned to the stage, finishing her presentation. Helen did not let obstacles stop her, and she continued giving lectures in front of thousands of people until nearly the end of her life. I like this story for two reasons. The first being Helen showing courage. And if Helen can, who is blind and deaf, can show courage and overcome obstacles, then so can we. The second reason I like this story is I can relate to it. I've given many speeches, and sometimes I feel like not showing up or running off the stage, including this speech. So if I run off the stage, I hope you'll be understanding. I have lots of people to thank. First, I'd like to thank the Bright Focus Foundation and the Helen Keller Foundation. These are two amazing organizations that do much for blindness research. In the case of the Helen Keller Foundation, also for deafness. I'd also like to thank Laura Beckwith of the Helen Keller Foundation, who put together much of this and worked with Ed and I through the process. I'd like to thank Keller Johnson Thompson here for all she's done and for presenting this award. I'd like to thank Dean Bach for that tremendous speech he gave summarizing our work. He talked about Bardet-Biedl syndrome better than I could. So I'd like to thank my many trainees, some who are here today, such as Arnie Nicedoen and Nina Hayter. I'd like to thank my many collaborators, also some of whom are here. I'd like to thank the Iowa Institute for Vision Research, who I work for, which Ed started, and it's a tremendous organization. I'd like to thank my wife, Kristen, for her support. I couldn't have done this without her. We've been married for 50 years. Of course, we were 9 when we got married. I'd like to thank my children and grandchildren who make life worth living, and the funding agencies who supported me, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, the Carver Charitable Trust, and the National Institutes of Health. And I'd just like to state that the National Institutes of Health is a national treasure, and it's being and it's currently being harmed. This is a list of some of my trainees on the left, or on your left, and some of my collaborators on your right. And this is the Iowa Institute for Vision Research, and you can see that there are a lot of people involved, and so it's not just Ed and I that do this work. And I'd like to thank especially Ed Stone for his collaboration with me all these years. Without Ed, I wouldn't have had the career I've had. This word serendipity is how I often think about my career. Serendipity means good luck in making unexpected and fortunate discoveries. However, I think in one sense, serendipity is the wrong word. I think the right word is providence. Providence implies a higher power. And since I'm a religious person, as was Helen Keller, I think a higher power has been involved in much of my work. I'll just give a few examples. This woman on your left, Rivka Karmi, I met at a meeting in 1990, and the person on the left, Khalil El-Bador, is a Bedouin Arab physician who I was introduced to by Rivka. And without them, we never would have been able to work on Bardet-Biedl syndrome. Bardet-Biedl syndrome, as Dean described, is noted here. It has retinopathy as a major feature, as well as obesity, hypertension, diabetes, learning disabilities, extra fingers and toes, and other anomalies. And it's a rare disorder, but by studying a rare disorder, you can learn much about common disorders. And so we've learned a lot about other retinopathies and about obesity, hypertension, and diabetes by studying this disorder. This just reminds me that our work starts with, it often starts with a patient or a family of patients, and I need to thank the many patients that have contributed to our work and made our work possible. This was Ed and my first paper together, and this is to remind me that we've worked together since 1990, and we published our first paper in 1991, and I'm so grateful for that collaboration. And I have a couple of quotes from Helen Keller that I want to talk about. Many persons have a wrong idea of what constitutes true happiness. It is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose. And another quote, life is an exciting business, and most exciting when it is lived for others. I think there's lots of people that don't get this, but Helen got it. And it's such, these quotes are great in that they teach us a lot. One interesting story I'll just take a moment to tell is that when Ed and I first started collaborating together, people in his department would tell him that he shouldn't collaborate with me because I would get all the credit. And people told me, in my department, told me I shouldn't collaborate with Ed because he will get all the credit. We were smart enough to know that that was stupid. And we began to collaborate together. And one time, we went to a meeting in Chicago together, and we were at this meeting, and the speaker was Joel Goldstein. Joel Goldstein won the Nobel Prize along with Mike Brown, and they collaborated together their whole career. They won the Nobel Prize for working out the importance of cholesterol and heart disease. And we were walking along. Joel Goldstein was a speaker at this meeting. We were walking along the streets afterwards, and there was Joel Goldstein, and Ed said, let's go talk to Joel Goldstein. That's the way Ed is. I'm kind of shy, and I wouldn't have done it, but Ed did. And Ed told Joe about our collaboration and asked Joe what he thought about that. And Joe said, it's the only way to do it. And so I'm so grateful for that. Now, I've written a few hundred papers, and I've only written one commentary, but I did write this commentary. It appeared in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It's called a 30-mile-per-hour headwind. And in this paper, I talk about seeing a patient over a weekend. And I had to go back several times to see this patient and the patient's family. It was a baby. And so I spent a lot of time here. And then it occurred to me that all the time I'd spent, I hadn't once thought about how I would be compensated for my time, or how the hospital would be compensated for my time. And I was discussing this with Ed, and Ed said the following: using the words financial incentive in the context of being a doctor is an insult. It is a pleasure, an honor, and responsibility to care for patients. And that's one thing that Ed really believes, and he's spent his whole career trying to make testing for eye diseases and treatments for eye diseases cost effective. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you who came to hear me, my family, and my friends. Thank you so much for coming. I grew up about 4 blocks from this very spot. And so that's why I have a lot of relatives and friends here. Thank you.
I'm sure many of you through the night have said to yourself, I'm glad I didn't have to follow that. And then a couple of minutes later you go, well, I'm glad I didn't have to follow that. So then I had to follow that. So I don't think he got the 5-minute memo, just so you know. So, yeah. So I want to thank the same people that Val thanked, obviously. I want to thank the Helen Keller Foundation for all of the wonderful work they do for this award. Thank the awards committee for considering us and selecting us for this tremendous honor. Thank all of the members of the organization for their kindness to us as we have worked through the process of putting on this fantastic dinner. And you know, it is humbling with these sorts of things. You feel like somebody else is supposed to be up here giving this talk. You know, it's like a dream where you didn't study for the test. And you go, what am I doing up here? But I also want to thank the Bright Focus Foundation, not only for co-sponsoring this wonderful event, but for supporting research in age-related macular degeneration, glaucoma, and Alzheimer's disease, 3, you know, very, very important areas of human disease, and especially for their focus on young investigators. And we are very fortunate to have Dr. Pandala and Dr. Malfal at the University of Iowa, who are both age-related macular degeneration researchers who are grant award winners from the Bright Focus. So thank you very much for that terrific support. So as Val told you, we've known each other a long time. This is after we were well established in our career. We're 5 years in at this point. And we know whenever somebody's writing an article, they always want you to look at the gel, you know. So I will truthfully disclose, this never happens in real life. If you see a picture of 2 senior people looking at an autoradiogram, somebody put them up to it. But the other story Val said about, I mean, that, you know, I love the Val relating the story that these senior people told us not to work together, and they were serious. They were dead serious about how we weren't going to get anywhere if we kept putting each other's names on those papers, you know. And but the thing he didn't tell you is that whenever we went to a genetics meeting, somebody would come up to me and say, "Are you Dr. Sheffield's fellow?" and I'd say no. And then if we went to an ophthalmology meeting, people would come up to him and say, "Are you Dr. Stone's fellow?" And he'd say no, and we'd go laugh about that. But you have to, you know, another thing that we say a lot, that we tell trainees a lot is, you know, take your work seriously, but don't take yourself very seriously. And if you just focus on getting the work done, you know, everything else will sort of take care of itself. So Val and I are geneticists, as you know, and so we spend a lot of time looking at pedigrees and trying to understand the meaning that lies in the middle of this pattern of disease that we see. And sometimes when you do that, there are just some like absolutely unbelievable coincidences that appear in these pedigrees. And I want to share one of those with you tonight. So Helen Keller had 4 siblings, 1 sister and 3 brothers. And so for the story I'm going to tell you tonight, we're going to talk about her middle brother, Simpson, and her sister, Mildred. So Mildred had 3 children, and the youngest of these was Patty. Patty had 2 sons, and the youngest of these, Warren, had 2 children. And he named his daughter Keller in honor of his great, famous great aunt. And of course, that Keller is our MC for this evening. Okay, so if we go back up to the top now and talk about her middle brother, Simpson. Simpson left the family home in Tuscumbia, Alabama in 1911 and moved to the capital of Alabama, Montgomery, where he became the first chief highway engineer for the state of Alabama. And so he designed a bunch of the major bridges and highways that are still serving the citizens of Alabama today. And this bridge over the Tennessee River is not far from Tuscumbia when it was built and was named for Simpson Keller. So Simpson, when he moved to Montgomery in this capacity of chief highway engineer, needed an appropriately important dwelling for him and his wife. And so he built this house on Felder Avenue in a part of Montgomery now known as Old Cloverdale. And that was the place to be. That was where F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda lived, and the Roaring Twenties and all that. That was all up and down Felder Avenue. And he lived there for the rest of his life. Simpson died in 1925. And when he died, his wife Annie moved back to Tuscaloosa to be with her family and put the house up for sale. And so this young couple, Milton and Nina, bought the house. And Milton and Nina were my grandparents. And so my father was also named Milton. And so Milton, my father, grew up in Simpson Keller's home until 1942 when he went to West Point. And after spending a few years overseas, came back and met my mother, Gwen. And these are photographs taken in the Felder Avenue house shortly after they were married. A party was held there in their honor. So when I was researching the whereabouts of all the Kellers for this set of remarks, I discovered that Helen Keller's sister Mildred had actually also moved to Montgomery at about the same time that Simpson did. And then in 1950, Mildred and her daughter Patty, who is Keller's grandmother, all lived within about 1,000 yards of my grandmother. So the 3 of them all lived together in that same little neighborhood of Montgomery that you could walk among those houses in just 7 or 8 minutes. So my brother and I were born in the 1950s. And in early 1960, my mother, Gwen, wrote a coloring book for teaching history to 4th graders. And this coloring book was actually adopted by the Board of Education of Alabama to teach history to young people. And in this book was this page that had Ivy Green, which was Helen Keller's birthplace. And so, of course, we had stacks of these things lying around the house, and I must have colored Ivy Green with crayons dozens of times as a child. And you see there in the text that Helen Keller was still alive when this book was written, and so you see that she was correctly recognized as one of America's most admired people which of course she still is today. So, growing up surrounded by Helen Keller's life and history, I suppose it was inevitable that I would end up spending the majority of my career doing what I could to look for the causes and pursue the treatments of various blinding eye conditions. And, I am so fortunate that I ran into Val because, without question, it was the single most important thing that happened in my career. And, the current times, as has been mentioned several times tonight, are very chaotic. But there have been lots of ups and downs in the last 35 years. And throughout that, I could always count on Val for great science, great advice, and great friendship. And so I just... So I want to add my thanks to, there are many of our trainees have now colleagues, very senior people now themselves who have gone off to make tremendous contributions to the world. We're so proud of them and appreciative of what they have taught us and what they have done. And we're so appreciative that you have taken time out to be with us tonight. So thank you very much for that. And then my wife, Mary, and I have only been married 44 years because we got married at the usual time. and so I want to thank her for her tremendous love and support for our long time together. And thank you all. Good night.
Thank you all so much. Congratulations. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight and sharing in this just wonderful occasion. Those two remind me of Helen Keller and Ann Sullivan. It really is remarkable. Thank you all so much, and congratulations, Dr. Sheffield, Dr. Stone, and please enjoy your evening, enjoy dinner, we have dessert, and enjoy your camaraderie together. Thank you.